Hello, my name is Chad Hart. I'm an extension economist with Iowa State University. And today I'd like to take a little time to go over what USDA projects as we look out for the rest of the 2024 marketing year for both corn and soybeans. Now, here in October is where we do start to see some of the harvest numbers coming in, and so USDA is able to more accurately reflect what we're seeing in terms of yields and production, but they also are giving us a snapshot on what we're expecting to see as we look at demand for the crops out there. And so, with the WASDE report, what they do is they share with us what is going on as far as feed demand is concerned, fuel demand through ethanol, and also what they're seeing within the export markets. Now, in terms of the update that they provided us here in mid October, the adjustments were relatively small. The idea is as they looked at the corn market, they made a few adjustments as we looked at for the 2023 crop year that we just wrapped up. They adjusted imports down by 2 million bushels. They reduced feed demand by 11 million bushels, raised ethanol demand by 6 million bushels. Food, seed, and other went up by a million, exports up by 2, but these are relatively small adjustments that sort of balanced each other out. But they did take the season average price for 2023 and dropped it 10 cents. And so it finished at $4.55 a bushel. So as you can see, comparing 2022 and 2023, there was a sizable drop in prices. We saw almost $2 come off the corn price. And so it has been a harsh adjustment as we've dealt with not only the record crop from last year, but now as we look to the 2024 crop, another record crop coming in here. 2023 was the record in terms of production. Now 2024 sets the record in terms of yield. As far as that yield is concerned, they actually ended up raising the yield by 2/10 of a bushel there to a record 183.8 bushels per acre. And so that by far exceeds the previous record, which was just set last year. This added another 17 million bushels to production. So as you're looking here, it's another 15 billion bushel corn crop. So a lot of corn to work with within the supply of corn in the marketplace. Now, looking down at demand, though, that we did see them adjust exports up 25 million bushels. So, in the grand scheme of things, actually, as we look at ending stocks towards the end of the 2024 marketing year, they were able to adjust those down just ever so slightly, and it crossed a very important threshold as we watched that ending stocks number drop below, just barely below 2 billion bushels. So, that is creating, if you will, at least a little positive news for the corn market as we're looking out there, but it wasn't enough to move their season average price. As they're looking forward over the next year, they expect the average price for corn to be $4.10 a bushel. Now, as we look at the soybean market, very small adjustments again here as well. They fiddled a little bit with the 2023 crop, basically subtracting a little bit from crush, adding a little bit to seed and residual, but in the grand scheme of things, things didn't move that much at all. And we saw the same adjustment in terms of price. They ended up lowering that season average price to $12.40 a bushel. So again, almost a $2 drop for soybeans as well over the past year. So we look forward to 2024. Here's a case where they did lower the yield ever so much. The idea is they took it down 1/10 of a bushel, but we're still looking at, again, a record crop in terms of both yield and production on the soybean side in 2024. So, again, a lot of crop to work with. Here's the challenge, though. We didn't see much adjustment at all on the demand side for soybean. And as you look there, what we have is really good demand, but not quite the record usage that we see, for example, on the corn side of the ledger. And probably the biggest challenge here will be the export market. I was hoping we might see some movement there, but USDA held firm on that number and leaving it at 1.85 billion bushels for expected for exports as we look out over the coming year. And they held their season average price at $10.80 a bushel. Now, in looking at those adjustments on yield, like I say, they didn't move the national numbers that much, but you could see some sizable swings in the statewide estimates. For example, here in Iowa, they raised the expected yield on the corn side here by 2 bushels per acre. So we're up to a record 214 bushels per acre average across the state. We continue to see records being projected in Illinois, Wisconsin, South Dakota, Nebraska as well. So there's a sizable crop here for the western and center part of the Corn Belt. Where we do see some damage is out there on the eastern side of the Corn Belt and in the southeast. And a lot of that was due to dry conditions, but I'm sure Helene and the flooding caused there is going to also take out some of that crop. But when we look at it from a nationwide perspective, best yielding crop we've ever seen, second largest crop in terms of production we've ever had. When you're looking at the soybean chart, the idea is a very similar pattern here. Again, the western and central corn belt came through very strong. Again, for Iowa, a record yield, 64 bushels per acre, up 2 bushels from last month. And as you're looking, Illinois, again, sets a record. So especially Iowa and Illinois came through this production season incredibly well. Now, when it comes to the world situation, they didn't make many adjustments there either. We did see a slight downward adjustment in world corn production. A lot of that coming out of the Black Sea region, where they pulled about 1 million tons out of Ukraine, 500,000 out of Russia. But overall, not much movement there. When we look at the soybean side, there was even less movement. So for an October report, this had very few changes when it came to the supply sides of the market. Like I say, where we did see some hope is on the export side. When you're looking at the weekly export sales thus far, the red line in this chart, the idea is we have seen the soybean numbers move above where we were at this year, at this time last year, but it wasn't enough of a movement to get USDA to change their number as they look at the projection. In fact, the idea is they're expecting some improvement as we look out over the year, but not catching up to the black line in this chart, which represents our 5-year average. But they did see enough movement on the corn side to make that move. And so with the corn numbers, we're about back to our 5-year average, again, running slightly better than we did last year. And we have seen a pickup in sales, especially in Latin America, as we look at both Mexico, but also further south, as you're looking at the Central American countries and into northern South America. We have seen increased exports over the course of the last few months. That's been helping to try to, if you will, support the corn market in this lower pricing period. Now, when it comes to where prices settled out after the report came out, from the corn market, I would say that the futures market is in line with what USDA is projecting out there. Like I say, USDA's average price estimate for 2024 is $4.10 a bushel. The market right now is at $4.15. So fairly close, but maybe a little more positive. And I would say that's based upon the export news that we've seen thus far. As we look further out into the 2025 crop, you can see that futures are slowly climbing. We have an average price estimate out there of almost $4.50 a bushel. So gaining back up towards where production costs are, but not quite reaching them yet. And so the next year or so will be tough financially as we're looking at corn production. The same is true of soybeans, except the hole may be a little bit bigger here, because in this case, the futures market is definitely more pessimistic when it comes to the price outlook as opposed to what USDA's got. USDA has $10.80 a bushel. Right now, the market's at $9.80, so it's taken another full dollar off where USDA is at right now. Now, as we look out towards 2025, 2026, we do see those futures prices building, but you notice they're hitting a hard cap there in the 1060, 1070, 1080 range. And so we don't see a lot of movement beyond that, and that leads to a futures price estimate for the 2025 price of $10.20. So not even reaching where USDA is currently at. And I think the biggest challenge when we're looking at the soybean market is just how big the global soybean production has been, the increases we've been seeing, especially out of Brazil, and how those South American soybeans have taken away a lot of U.S. market share when it comes to export potential here. And that's going to be the biggest challenge as we look forward. When we're looking at prices relative to cost, both crops right now are lining up below break even. In this case, the black line there at 460 for corn on the left-hand side, 1125 for soybeans on the right-hand side, showing you our production cost estimates going into the 2024 growing season. and prices are well below that, but we have seen somewhat of a rally since, say, mid-August. We had worked our way back. We've given back about a third to a half of that now over the past week. I think we will see the markets turn around again and slowly start to build their way up as we go through the rest of this fall into winter time, and we'll see that again, sort of like what the futures are projecting right now. Slow growth in prices over time, but probably not reaching that black line anytime real soon. And in fact, as we look at the 2025-26 prices, yeah, they have taken a step back as well here, but you can see that, especially for corn, this little drop that we've seen here over the past week or so hasn't been impacting the longer term outlook for corn quite as much as it has for soybeans. Again, I think reflecting the difference we're seeing when it comes to global competition. We see that maybe easing a bit for corn, but still very strong as we're looking out there for soybeans. But anyway, that's sort of the outlook as we're seeing it right now. We'll come back with another video at mid-November when USDA update these again. At that time, we shall have close to the final numbers when we're looking at the production side, and we'll have 3 to 4 more weeks worth of export data to see if we are starting to see that international growth that USDA is hoping for, especially as we're looking at corn. With that, my name is Chad Hart again. I'm an extension economist at Iowa State University, and thank you for the privilege of your time.